The View never saw this coming. For weeks they mocked the lawsuit, they downplayed it on air, they even tried to ignore it completely. But now they're begging Karoline Leavitt to drop her massive $800 million lawsuit. Yes, you heard that right, begging. This isn't just a minor legal dispute anymore. This has become a full-blown crisis for ABC, The View, and the hosts who thought they could say whatever they wanted without consequences. And Karoline, she's not backing down. The desperation is so obvious even. Loyal fans of The View are starting to question everything. What really happened behind the scenes? Why are Whoopi, Joy, and the rest of the hosts suddenly panicking? And most importantly, is it already too late for them? Because this isn't just about Karoline anymore. This could be the lawsuit that finally brings The View down. Let's break it all down. At first, The View acted like the lawsuit was a joke. The host laughed it off, mocking Karoline Leavitt on air, acting as if she was just looking for attention. Joy Behar rolled her eyes and dismissed it as yet another conservative trying to play victim. Whoopi Goldberg shrugged it off, saying, "Please, we've dealt with worse. This will be forgotten in a week." Sunny Hostin, the show's resident legal analyst, smirked and confidently predicted that the case would be thrown out immediately. She leaned into her legal background, trying to downplay the lawsuit, saying this is just another frivolous case that won't go anywhere. Legally speaking, she doesn't have a leg to stand on, and for a moment it seemed like their strategy was working. The media backed them up, treating the lawsuit as nothing more than a stunt. CNN ran a segment calling it a baseless attempt to silence free speech. MSNBC's legal analysts confidently predicted that the lawsuit wouldn't hold up in court. The message was clear: Karoline didn't have a chance, or at least that's what they thought, because behind the scenes ABC's legal team wasn't laughing. They knew something the hosts didn't, and once the reality of the lawsuit started sinking in, the mood changed. While The View hosts continued to laugh off the lawsuit on air, the mood inside ABC's headquarters was anything but relaxed. The network's legal team had been closely examining Karoline Leavitt's case, and what they found sent shock waves through the executives. This wasn't just some frivolous lawsuit that could be brushed aside. The $800 million lawsuit was built on solid ground, with documented evidence, witness testimonies, and a clear argument for defamation, workplace misconduct, and malicious intent. Behind closed doors, ABC executives were in full-blown crisis mode. The legal team held urgent closed-door meetings, scrambling to find any possible way to stop this from reaching court. Top-level producers were panicking, realizing that if Karoline's lawsuit actually made it to trial, internal emails, behind-the-scenes conversations, and private production decisions would all be exposed. It wasn't just about Karoline's lawsuit, it was about everything ABC had tried to keep buried, and now they were at risk of losing it all. Even the network's most powerful figures, executives, PR strategists, and legal advisors, were divided. Some wanted to fight it out and take their chances in court. Others, however, knew the risk was too great and insisted on finding a way to settle quietly. And while all of this was happening, the hosts of The View were completely oblivious to just how serious the situation had become. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin were still making jokes on live TV. They had no idea that ABC's top executives were already drafting an emergency plan to make it all go away. And when they finally realized what was happening, it was already too late. The second The View host got word that ABC was considering negotiating with Karoline Leavitt, everything changed. Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar were livid. They had spent weeks mocking Karoline, dismissing her lawsuit as a desperate grab for attention, but now their own network was secretly trying to make a deal behind their backs. The moment Whoopi found out, she exploded. "Are you kidding me? We're actually taking her seriously now," she shouted in a closed-door meeting. She wasn't just angry at the lawsuit, she was furious at ABC. For years, Whoopi had been untouchable. She had survived scandals, controversies, and backlash before, and the network always had her back. Now they were seriously considering bending the knee to Karoline Leavitt. Joy Behar wasn't any calmer. She stormed into the dressing room, slamming her makeup case down. "We're not giving her a damn dime," she fumed. "We built this show, we made this network money, and now they're going to fold over some stupid lawsuit." Sunny Hostin, usually the most composed, was also visibly shaken. She had brushed off the legal battle on air, but behind the scenes she knew the lawsuit could be a disaster. She had seen the court documents, she had seen the evidence Karoline was bringing forward, and worst of all, she knew the lawsuit wasn't as weak as they had all pretended it was. The legal team had already warned them if this went to trial, they could all be dragged into it. Emails, meeting transcripts, off-air conversations, everything they had ever said about Karoline Leavitt publicly and privately could come back to haunt them now. For the first time since the lawsuit was filed, Whoopi and Joy weren't laughing anymore, they were panicking. And as the reality of the situation set in, Whoopi grabbed her phone and started making calls. She wasn't about to let Karoline Leavitt win without a fight, And that's when she made a desperate move that changed everything. The moment The View realized they were losing this fight, everything changed. For weeks, they had mocked Karoline Leavitt. They laughed off her lawsuit, dismissed her as an attention seeker, and made it clear that they thought she didn't have a chance. But now they were publicly begging her to stop. It started subtly on one of their recent episodes. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin sat uncomfortably as the lawsuit was finally brought up. Instead of their usual confidence, they looked defeated. Whoopi said, shaking her head, "Look, I think we all just need to take a step back here. There's been a lot of unnecessary hostility. And frankly, this isn't good for anyone." Joy, the same person who mocked Karoline on air just weeks ago, suddenly had a different tone. "I don't know why this has to go so far. I mean, can't we just sit down like adults and talk this out?" she said. Sunny Hostin, a former prosecutor, was the most desperate of them all. She leaned forward, carefully choosing her words. "Karoline, if you're watching, I think there's a way we can resolve this without dragging it through the courts. Maybe it's time we all come together and find some common ground." It was a stunning moment. The same women who trashed Karoline Leavitt for weeks were now practically begging her for mercy. But the truth, this wasn't about finding common ground. This was about saving themselves. Behind the scenes, ABC's legal team had made it clear this lawsuit was dangerous. If Karoline kept pushing forward, the show could be forced to expose private emails, text messages, and behind-the-scenes conversations. And if that happened, it could destroy The View for good. The public plea was a last-ditch attempt to avoid total disaster. But there was just one problem: Karoline Leavitt wasn't buying it, and the moment she responded, it was over. For The View, the second The View's public plea aired, the internet erupted. Social media was flooded with reactions, and nobody was buying it. Viewers saw right through the sudden shift in tone. For weeks, Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin mocked Karoline Leavitt and acted as if her lawsuit was a joke. Now they were practically on their knees begging her to stop, and the internet wasn't letting them get away with it. Oh, now they want to talk things out after weeks of trashing Karoline. Too late. The View thought they were untouchable. Now they're panicking because Karoline is actually winning. Joy Behar looked like she saw a ghost. They know this lawsuit is serious. Sunny Hostin is a former prosecutor. She knows they're in deep trouble. The hypocrisy was too obvious to ignore. Conservative commentators were having a field day. Fox News aired a segment titled "The View is Panicking. Karoline Leavitt's Lawsuit Has Them Begging for Mercy." The Daily Wire posted a brutal reaction. "Watch Whoopi and Joy try to save themselves. Too late." Even independent creators were calling it out. YouTubers were tearing apart the fake sympathy, pointing out that this wasn't about reconciliation, this was about survival. And the memes, they were relentless. Whoopi, when she realized Karoline isn't backing down, accompanied by a picture of a panicked Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Bear, trying to pretend she didn't mock Karoline last week, with a clip of someone awkwardly backpedaling. The View's audience wasn't buying it either. Comments flooded their official YouTube and social media pages. "Wow, this is pathetic. If you weren't guilty, you wouldn't be begging. First you mocked her, now you want to talk. Nope, Karoline has all the power. Now The View just exposed themselves." The narrative had completely flipped. What started as The View confidently dismissing Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit had turned into a full-blown crisis. And the worst part for them, Karoline was just getting started. If The View thought they could rewrite history, conservative media wasn't going to let it slide. The moment Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin started pleading for Karoline Leavitt to drop her lawsuit, conservative outlets went into overdrive, exposing every single moment of hypocrisy that led to this moment. Fox News dedicated entire segments to the dramatic shift in The View's attitude. The contrast was too obvious to ignore. Just weeks ago, these same hosts had mocked Karoline, dismissing her lawsuit as nothing more than a desperate publicity stunt. Now, with their backs against the wall, they were practically grailing on live television. Tucker Carlson wasted no time tearing apart The View's sudden change in tone. He played clips of Whoopi and Joy laughing about the lawsuit spliced next to their latest attempt at damage control. "This is what happens when you don't take a lawsuit seriously until it's too late." They called her lawsuit a joke. Now they're on national TV begging for mercy. First they mocked, then they dismissed, now they're terrified. The Daily Wire's headline was even more brutal: "The View's fake apology. Whoopi and Joy are terrified of Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit." Ben Shapiro didn't hold back either. On his show, he methodically picked apart The View's pathetic attempt to backtrack, calling their desperation one of the most embarrassing public reversals in television history. He played side-by-side clips of Whoopi and Joy's dismissive remarks about the lawsuit, followed by their latest plea for Karoline to sit down and find common ground. His take was sharp: "They want a conversation now. Where was this energy when they were smearing Karoline on live TV? The only reason they're begging is because they know they're about to lose. This isn't an apology, it's damage control, and it's failing miserably." Candace Owens went even further, calling it one of the most transparent, desperate attempts at saving face in television history. she ripped into Whoopi and Joy's fake humility, highlighting how they had spent years branding themselves as the champions of strong women, yet were now on their knees begging the very woman they tried to destroy to save them. They thought Karoline was an easy target. They thought they could take her down now. They're panicking. This is what happens when you push the wrong person. Karoline isn't backing down. It's too late for an apology, ladies. And then there was Sunny Hostin, perhaps the most hypocritical of them all. As a former prosecutor, she of all people should have known the legal weight of this lawsuit, but instead of taking it seriously from the start, she stood by as her co-hosts mocked and ridiculed Karoline, assuming there would be no consequences. Now her tone had completely changed. Reports surfaced that she had been urging Whoopi and Joy to soften their stance because she knew exactly how bad this was about to get. Even CNN tried to provide cover for The View, but their spin wasn't landing. Their attempt to frame the lawsuit as a politically motivated stunt only made things worse. Because once again viewers had the receipts and independent media wasn't letting it slide. YouTube commentators and political analysts tore The View's damage control efforts apart, breaking down every moment of their desperate plea. Whoopi and Joy wanted to play tough until they realized Karoline actually had a case. Joy Bahar's face when reading that teleprompter, you can see how much she regrets this. Sunny Hostin should have known better. She's a former prosecutor. Now she's trying to spin this too. Late by the end of the night, the internet was flooded with clips exposing The View's hypocrisy. One viral video even spliced together Joy Bahar's sneering remark, "This lawsuit is going nowhere," with her panicked expression during their desperate public plea. The contrast was humiliating, and the memes brutal. This is The View's Bud Light moment. Whoopi Goldberg is learning the hard way what happens when you mess with the wrong conservative. Joy Bahar just had her CNN Plus moment. This is a total disaster. But the worst part for The View, Karoline didn't even need to say a word. Conservative media was doing it for her. She simply let the meltdown unfold. And the more The View begged, the weaker they looked. ABC was in full-blown crisis mode. The network had faced controversy before, countless scandals, endless public outrage. But nothing like this, nothing that felt this out of control. Executives knew that if Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit moved forward, they wouldn't just be facing bad press, they'd be dragged into a legal battle that could unearth everything happening behind the scenes at The View, and that was their worst nightmare. Their first instinct was to ignore it. They assumed Karoline would move on, that the media would shift focus, that viewers would forget. But they were wrong. The backlash wasn't fading, it was getting worse. Every day more people called for accountability, more outlets covered the lawsuit, more voices demanded that ABC take responsibility. And the worst part, ratings were plummeting. The View's audience had already been shrinking for years, but this lawsuit had caused a free fall. Viewers were tuning out, advertisers were reconsidering contracts, and ABC's own insiders were admitting this was getting dangerous. So the network did what it always did. When facing a scandal, they tried to make it go away. First, they attempted back-channel negotiations. Sources revealed that high-level executives quietly reached out to Karoline's legal team, offering a massive settlement if she agreed to withdraw the lawsuit and sign an airtight non-disclosure agreement. The offer, millions just to walk away. But Karoline wasn't interested. She had already made it clear this lawsuit wasn't about money, it was about exposing the corruption inside The View. And when ABC realized she wasn't backing down, they panicked. Their next move, reputation management. ABC rushed out a carefully worded PR statement. At ABC, we take all concerns seriously and remain committed to fostering a respectful and inclusive workplace. We are reviewing recent developments and continue to engage in productive dialogue with all parties involved. It was corporate speak at its finest, meaningless, vague, and designed to say absolutely nothing, and nobody was buying it. The press immediately tore it apart. ABC is clearly scrambling to contain the damage from Karoline Leavitt's lawsuit. Fox News, they dismissed her, mocked her. Now they're begging her to let this go. Unbelievable. The Daily Wire this week, PR statement proves one thing: ABC is terrified. Breitbart. ABC executives hoped the statement would calm the storm. Instead, it fueled the fire. And then came the media spin. The network quietly reached out to their allies, left-leaning outlets like CNN, MSNBC, and The Washington Post, urging them to reshape the narrative. CNN ran a segment claiming Karoline's lawsuit was nothing more than political grandstanding. MSNBC suggested that the lawsuit was a tactic to stir outrage and divide audiences. The Washington Post published an op-ed arguing that The View was being unfairly targeted by conservative activists. But the problem, the actual footage from The View spoke for itself. Viewers had seen Whoopi, Joy, and Sunny dismiss Karoline. They had watched them mock her, belittle her, and treat her as if she didn't matter. And now that those same hosts who had once laughed at her were desperately begging her to drop the lawsuit, the hypocrisy was blinding, and the audience wasn't falling for it. Social media was filled with brutal comments. The View clowned Karoline, and now they're begging her to let them off the hook. Hilarious. Whoopi and Joy were so confident a few weeks ago. Look at them now. ABC trying to spin this like Karoline is the bad guy when they are the ones being sued. Pathetic. And that's when things really started falling apart, because ABC's last-ditch move distanced itself from the View. Behind closed doors, network executives were reportedly furious, with the show's hosts. Insiders claimed that ABC was actively considering major changes and even discussing whether the View was worth keeping on air. And for the first time in years, there were whispers that ABC might cancel The View entirely. One source inside ABC put it bluntly: this show has become more trouble than it's worth. The backlash, the lawsuits, the bad press, it's endless. The execs are exploring their options. And the panic inside The View, it was absolute chaos. Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Tin never expected it to go this far. They thought Karoline was just another conservative guest, someone they could mock and dismiss like all the others, but instead she had completely flipped the script. ABC had underestimated Karoline Leavitt, and now she had them cornered, and every single person inside that network knew it. If ABC and The View thought Karoline Leavitt would cave under pressure, they were about to be proven dead wrong. The moment it became public that The View was now begging her to drop the lawsuit, the entire country started watching. This wasn't just another media scandal. It had transformed into a high-stakes battle between a major television network and a young conservative firebrand who had refused to be silenced. Would Karoline take the deal? Would she negotiate? Would she finally let it go and move on? She made them wait for a full 24 hours. Karoline didn't say a word, no statements, no social media posts, no interviews, nothing. And that silence drove The View's hosts into full-blown meltdown mode. Behind the scenes, the panic was unreal. Whoopi Goldberg was reportedly furious, demanding to know why their legal team wasn't able to predict Karoline's next move. She wanted to control the narrative, but without Karoline responding, she had nothing to push back against. Joy Behar wasn't handling it well either. The woman who had spent decades running her mouth mocking conservatives and brushing off criticism was now the one under pressure. She ranted to producers about how unfair it was that Karoline was taking things this far. Sunny Hostin, usually the more composed one, was visibly shaken. She knew exactly what Karoline was doing. This wasn't desperation. Karoline wasn't scrambling or reacting emotionally. She was in control. And then Karoline finally broke her silence. But instead of engaging in a drawn-out back-and-forth media war, she did something far more devastating. She dropped one statement, no press release, no dramatic monologue, just one post on social media. "I'm not backing down. The truth matters. See you in court." 5 words. And those 5 words sent shock waves through ABC headquarters because they meant one thing. Karoline wasn't negotiating. She wasn't playing their game. She wasn't looking for settlements or compromises. She was taking this all the way. And the internet exploded. "She's not backing down." Whoopi and Joy are done. They mocked her, tried to intimidate her. And now they're begging. Incredible. Karoline Leavitt is about to expose everything. ABC should be terrified. Within hours, the clip of Karoline's response was trending. Conservative influence, ERS news anchors, and legal analysts were dissecting every word. Fox News ran a segment on it, calling it one of the most stunning moments in television history. The Daily Wire reported ABC's nightmare is just beginning. Karoline is taking this fight to the finish line. Meanwhile, ABC executives were blindsided. They had assumed Karoline would negotiate, that she'd try to settle, that she'd back down. Instead, she shut them down completely. No drama-filled rebuttal, no drawn-out negotiation. Just a cold, hard promise. She wasn't letting them off the hook. And inside The View's offices, the panic turned into full-blown desperation, because now this wasn't just a TV controversy. This wasn't just damage control. This was real. The lawsuit was moving forward. The media was fully invested. And no amount of PR spin, no damage control strategies, no backrow deals could stop the one thing ABC feared the most. Karoline Leavitt exposing everything in court. Karoline Leavitt's refusal to back down wasn't just a bold statement. It was a declaration of war for ABC, The View, and the network's high-powered attorneys. This was their worst-case scenario. They had tried everything: mockery, dismissing the lawsuit as a joke, calling Karoline's claims baseless, but none of it worked. The second their legal team realized she wasn't bluffing, everything changed, and now they were out of options. Inside ABC's headquarters, the panic had escalated into full-blown crisis mode. Behind closed doors, top executives were holding emergency meetings, scrambling for a way to contain the fallout. Some were furious at the show's hosts, blaming them for letting the situation spiral out of control. Others were desperate to make this lawsuit disappear before it dragged the entire network into the mud, but the damage was already Done for years, The View had operated with zero accountability. They could mock and belittle anyone they wanted, conservative guest politicians, even their own audience. And for years they got away with it. But now, for the first time ever, they were the ones under fire. And the most humiliating part, the same woman they tried to publicly tear down was now threatening to expose them on the biggest stage possible inside a courtroom. ABC's legal team was in full-blown panic mode. Executives were reportedly begging the host to lay low, avoid making things worse, and stop adding fuel to the fire. They had already seen what happened when Whoopi and Joy Behar opened their mouths and made things worse on air. And now every single word they said was being dissected by Karoline's legal team. Their offhand remarks, their condescending tone, their outright mockery. It wasn't just bad PR anymore, it was evidence in an ongoing legal battle. And according to sources inside ABC, this lawsuit wasn't just about Karoline anymore. Other former guests, contributors, and staff members had started coming forward. Whispers of behind-the-scenes misconduct, double standards, and mistreatment had begun to surface. And if this lawsuit moved forward to trial, what else would come out? What other scandals had ABC kept buried for years? What other explosive secrets were about to be exposed? And how far would The View's hosts go to protect themselves? The media world was holding its breath. The legal teams were rambling, and Karoline, she wasn't even considering their offers to settle. She had bigger plans. She wasn't just going after a single show. She was going after the entire system that had protected them for years. This was no longer just a lawsuit. This was a reckoning. And The View, they weren't ready for what was coming next. So the question now is, what happens next? Stay tuned, because The View's worst nightmare is just beginning.